So again, good morning. Welcome everybody to this, our third of the virtual town hall sessions in our first round of engagement with you, our members. This is an opportunity for us to really, as member libraries, come together and give feedback and help really set some guidance for the town, for the strategic plan for Rails. And just to begin, I wanted to start with a few introductions, and I'll start with myself. My name is Stephanie Chase. I'm the founding principal of the Constructive Disruption Consultancy, which focuses on staff-led, community-focused strategic planning, change management, and strengths-based leadership. I'm working with Rails leadership, Rails staff, and you as member libraries and member leaders to facilitate the development of a new strategic plan. And our session today is just one of the ways that you as members can be involved. So just a little bit about me. I think often library people want to know more about library people. So I've been working in libraries for over 20 years, including as a decade as a library director in small and rural libraries in Vermont and New Hampshire, some time as a school librarian, and a decade in executive library leadership out in Pacific Northwest where I live, including until just before the pandemic, 5 years as the director of libraries for Hillsboro, Oregon. In addition to my consulting work, I'm currently the executive director of the Libraries of Eastern Oregon, which is a 15-county, 50-member library consortium system covering about 50,000 square miles. I'm also on my second term on the Public Library Association's board of directors, and I serve on the ALA Council with Monica, as a matter of fact. And I would also like to acknowledge and thank the members of our Strategic Planning Steering Committee. So it's comprised of members, board members, and Rails staff. So I will pause my recording and stop sharing my screen so those who are here can wave and say hello. But before we do that, again, I just want to thank you for your time. For those of you who are in the audience, make note of who's on the Strategic Planning Committee. They're really an excellent connection for you, and they'll be really helping guide the plan through to its finishing stages. So let me just pause for a second. Recording again. So again, thank you, Monica, for welcoming us. And let's just cover what we're going to go over today. So we had our introductions and our words of welcome. We're going to take a look at the tools we'll be using in our town hall. And as a note for those who are watching the recording, I'll share how long those will be open. There is a section of time that they'll be open for your comment, but they will have a closing date. We're going to go over the planning process and how the plan will be structured. And then we'll be reviewing some potential goal concepts. So let's just take a look at our tools. We're going to be using a wide variety of technology tools today. And the first one is Poll Everywhere. So this gives us the opportunity for in-the-moment anonymous contributions, and a lot of times great opportunity to do feedback when we come out of our breakout groups. So for those who are watching the recording, get a sense of the conversation that was had in today's session. So there are two ways that you can use Poll Everywhere. One, if you're like me and your phone is always kind of right at hand, you could use your texting app. So whatever app you use to send texts, open that up. In the to field where you would put typically someone's phone number or a name, you're going to type 22333. And then in the text message body where you would put your message, you're going to type constructive 785, and that's all one word, so no space. When you send that, you should get a text back that says you're now part of the poll. And from that point forward, each text that you send will be an answer to the poll. Now, if you prefer, you can use the web. So if you want to do that on the computer that you're on, typically when Zoom goes full screen, when Zoom goes into screen share, it goes to full screen. So if you press escape, it will shrink Zoom just a little bit. Then you'll be able to navigate back to your browser where you can open a new window or a new tab and put in pollev.com/constructive785, again, all one word. And then of course, if you have your phone nearby or a tablet, anything else, you can certainly use the browser on that to participate as well. On the web, it asks you for your name, which I cannot see, so you can go ahead and press skip. And then from that point on, you'll be able to see what question it is that we're on and asking on the web version, and it will give you a spot to put your answer in. So we'll start with an easy one. You can see the instructions are at the top of the poll each time. So share with me in one word what your favorite breakfast is. And as a note, if your favorite breakfast has more than one word in it, you'll want to keep those two words together using the hyphen. So if you put a space in, it will break your answer up into two contributions. So coffee came in strong with the first entry, but now we're really a pancakes crew. A mimosa, I appreciate you. Biscuits and gravy, eggs Benedict. We have some eggs, coffee coming back strong, toast, oatmeal with berries, a kale smoothie, very healthy. I had eggs and coffee myself this morning. And so you can see again where we have poached eggs or biscuits and gravy or oatmeal with berries, those hyphens keep those words together. All right. So maybe just a moment and then we'll move on to our second question. Pizza, a favorite in my house as well. So now we'd like for you to share what kind of library you work in. In this case, if you're texting, you could just text the letter that corresponds to the answer, that to the label that really is the library type that represents you. So as typical, I think for many of our Rails engagements, we have a strong public library showing, a few academic library staff, some special library staff here with us, and then of course some Rails staff. So one note, I'll share the last date with you again, but we want to make sure that we're really hearing from our school, our academic and our special library colleagues. So for everyone here who's a public library staff person, I really encourage you after today to think of someone in your network. So whether that's a person in your town, someone that you know, to really invite them to come to the last session that we have. Because again, we want to make sure that we're really hearing across our member voices. And then we'd like to know in one word, what's your role at your library? And as you saw from the breakfast piece, if we have more than one person put in that same word, it will get bigger. So if you see somebody put up a role here that really reflects your job, you can go ahead and type in the same word, and then that gets it a little bit bigger. It's a lot of directors. Thank you for taking the time this morning. Everything. It's so true. We have a dean, we have a board trustee with us here today, someone who does cataloging, administration, reference librarian. So I think it's always nice to be reminded of the great mix of roles that we have within our colleagues and within Rails. And then we have one last question. And that's that we're wondering if you attended the September 30th member update session. So that was a little while ago now. But we did do some overview and some engagement around the strategic plan. So a recording of that is available, and I'll work with Monica. We'll make sure that when our town hall sessions are out, we send the links both to this and to the September 30th recording. It could be great if you watch the two of them together. You could get a really nice, strong overview. I get a sense of what people really contributed. So if you weren't able to attend, you will not be lost today, I promise. But if you did attend, a little bit of what we're doing today will be a review for you, or it will help you remember since it's been some time now. So that one of the next tools we'll be using are our breakout rooms in Zoom. And I'm sure that we are probably all pretty familiar with these now, but just a quick reminder that when they open, you'll receive a pop-up notification where you will click to join your room. And again, since we can't see the main room when we're in our breakout rooms, that's where that breakout guide comes very handy. Then you'll have the questions and the topics at hand. You don't have to worry about taking notes or your screenshots or anything before you go in. And then when you're in your breakout group, I'll keep track of time for you so that you don't have to worry about that. And those pop up as notifications at the top of your screen. The first two will be in random groups, but the last one you'll be choosing the breakout group that you want to be in, and we'll help you if you have trouble with that. And then finally, we'll be using Google Forms and Padlet to help collect some of your input in the moment. So I'll show a sample of the form that we're using to collect notes when that time comes. And then just a little bit about Padlet, which we'll look at before we use them. It's an online collaboration tool that really kind of combines Post-it-like functionality with some features that you're familiar with from social media. So the ability to like and the ability to comment on posts. And the note I'll give about Padlet is kind of just like we're in those in-person sessions, if we remember them, where we'd all have our Post-its and people are writing furiously and hanging up. The goal is not necessarily to see and read everything in the moment, but to engage broadly with what's being put up. And for those who are watching the recording after, you'll have the benefit of seeing those contributions when they're done. So now let's just take a few minutes to look at the details of this process. So we're all really starting from the same place and using the same vocabulary. So our planning process really begins by building on the success from our current plan. So we're really looking at our current strategic goals and taking what's been successful and bringing it forward. So it doesn't mean we're keeping the exact same goals, but that they're where we start to really explore what must continue, what's a really foundational part of our work, and also crucially, what gaps may have made themselves clear or what opportunities are presented to us now. So we'll be engaging with them in just a little bit, just those areas of strength to see what you really see going forward in the future as members. So we also are really building a process that asks you as member libraries and also our Rails staff to really take the lead in shaping the objectives and the measurements of success. And again, we'll touch on this vocabulary in just a moment. And we do that by really incorporating the core values of the International Association of Public Participation, or the IAP2, into our process. So you could go to their website and you can see their core values. And so you don't need to worry about what's on the screen. What I want you to know is that your participation is really taken very, very seriously. And so this is how these core values really translate for us. This is infused into the process that we're building. That you as member libraries and our Rails staff, the participation in the process is prioritized. So we're really making sure, first and foremost, we're hearing from those voices. The contributions that you make to the process will help shape the final product. Sometimes that feels surprising to say, but I think we've all been part of kind of planning or information or opinion gathering processes where it's been hard to see where our contributions have gone. So in this case, we're making a pledge that it will help shape the final product. We're going to offer multiple modes of participation and help make sure members can participate. So really trying to think about the barriers, the opportunities that we have to make sure people participate. And that when we come to the final product, we'll be able to share how your input shaped that final product. So part of us presenting to the board, we'll be able to trace that line through the work that we've done. And so our work in that process is to really develop a plan where strategies are supported by measurable objectives. So we want to make sure that we're really able to show our work, essentially. We want to make sure that our Rails staff can see their work in the plan, so they can see what they do echoed, but also the opportunities they have to contribute to the plan, and that work supports you in member libraries. We want to make sure we're incorporating the lessons that we learned during the pandemic. We've had this amazing opportunity, kind of 18 months of innovation and iteration amongst all those challenges. So what are we taking forward with us? And we want to make sure that our plan really first and foremost focuses on member library need. So our strategic plan steering committee, they have a big role to play in keeping us true to these values and really making sure that our work remains focused on that member library need. And so let's just touch base on the timeline. So we got started back in August and September. We had sessions with the board, with Rails staff. We put together the steering committee to really begin the work. October and November, so what we're in right now, this is where our virtual engagement really is taking place. So we have these town hall sessions, and we'll touch on that second round that Monica mentioned. And we have engagement sessions with the board, with our steering committee. We'll be doing focus groups and interviews as well. In December and January, we're really bringing that steering committee together to really do some brainstorming to really start to develop and shape the plan. We're really going to narrow down those objectives and craft that plan language. Leading up to the end of January 2022, we present a draft of the plan to the board. So I know that this feels fast often when you see it written down. So just encourage everybody to take a step back and remember this is 5 months of work. So it's not an insignificant amount of time. So just as we get started, one of the things that we're really curious about is how familiar you are with Rails' current strategic plan. There is no wrong answer here, so I encourage you just to be honest. Again, some of what we're really wanting to do with this plan is to make sure that it's really a useful guide and a tool, not just for our staff in Rails, but for you as member libraries as well. So for some of us, we've looked at it. Some of us are very familiar, so not a surprise because I know we have some Rails staff here with us today. But for most of us, we haven't really looked at it. So most of us, we're seeing, kind of the work of that plan, but we haven't read it, and we don't know about it. So one of the things that we can really think about going forward is how we can make sure that we're being really clear with the strategies that we are working on so that you will be able to tie it to the strategic plan. And so now let's touch base on that vocabulary. Again, as we start our discussions today, we want to make sure that we're really thinking about the concepts in the same way. So if we look first at the elements of a strategic plan, we tend to see them in two groups. So we have a vision, mission statements, and our core values. And these tend to be more evergreen. So they're less likely to change because they're really representing a really fundamental core parts of our culture and our organization. Now, it doesn't mean they can't be refreshed, and we are going to be working with the strategic plan steering committee to update the mission statement. But if we think about the vision statement as kind of the broadest, the biggest, it represents this ambitious hope that we're striving for. And that should be beyond the organization, because our mission statement really tells us what we're going to offer to help make that vision a reality. Our mission statement is why we do, what makes us unique. And our core values are what we really hold important to us as we do that work. The next 4 elements, so our strategic goals, our objectives, how we're measuring our success, and what we're doing on an annual basis, those do tend to change from plan to plan. Those strategic goals are kind of the top level. They're what we're focusing on to support the mission. Our objectives are what we're doing to support those goals. Our measurements are telling us how we're determining our success. And then our annual actions, that's where we tend to see the details. So again, we think of those strategic goals as the broadest elements, and that's what we're here today to start to engage with. So they represent where Rails will focus resources. So an important note about strategic goals is that a strategic plan overall is not meant to reflect everything an organization does. It's meant to reflect what an organization is going to be focusing on for the next period of time. So while it's important that the plan comes out, resonates, it feels of value, you can see your needs reflected in it, there will always be elements of something that an organization does that may not be clearly represented or clearly called out in a strategic plan, particularly at the goal level, because it's what we're doing. It's just part of the foundational work that we do. So I think if we remember that high level, this is what we want to see Rails focus on for the next, say, 3 years, is this is what we want them to invest in. So they're going to keep doing what they're doing well, but we want them to invest even more in these areas. then we get a little specific what that looks like, that investment looks like by the objectives that are under the goals. Then each goal can have a number of objectives. That really highlights how we'll be working. So if we're saying we're focusing in a certain area, this is really how we're going to focus. So it gets more specific each layer as we go down. We get a little bit more direction, we get a little bit more structure. And then each objective really needs to have a measurement of success because that's how we know if we're working in the right direction. So an objective, by pairing that objective with a clear sense of expectation or measurement or some kind of assessment, we really further focus our attention and our investment. And so an example that I can offer that will resonate with many of us in public libraries is that a lot of public libraries typically have some kind of goal, so some kind of that top expression around literacy. And you may have a goal, or I should say you have a top level to support students. And one of your goals may be an early literacy goal. So overall, we might be saying we really want to focus on our students. One of the ways we're focusing on our students is through early literacy, so our youngest patrons. And one of the activities that we really do to do that is story time. So none of that tends to be a surprise for us. But our measurement of success, how we know if we're working in the right direction, you can see that might determine for us what kind of story times we do. So if we are really strongly focusing on kindergarten readiness, so we have some kind of measurement or some kind of assessment that's really about helping our youngest patrons be ready to start school academically, then we would likely incorporate a lot of number or pattern or color or letter recognition into our story times. It's really starting to work on that with our youngest patrons. Or we might really have a focus that our story times really fill a social need. It's about connecting parents and doing some of those things about being in a space with other kids. And that might lead our story times to having more elements of play or exploration. So you can see how, depending on how we're really determining where we're going, it could really determine the actions that we take to get there. And so it's important to remember with measurements of success, we can use many different data points and that we can use multiple for the same. And this is some of what we'll really be exploring in that second round town hall. What are our expectations for the work that we're doing? How would we really measure them? And then finally, each year, Rails staff and leadership will be responsible for in some way doing annual action planning. And Rails already has a very robust structure around this. So a lot of engagement and reporting around their annual activities. And this is where you'll really see specific projects and initiatives. For those of us who have been in libraries for a long enough time, we might be thinking back to kind of older versions of strategic planning where you'd have the thick binder, you'd be thinking about 5 years out, the activities that you would be doing. And that is no longer best practice. And I think the pandemic probably taught us that more than anything, that it's even challenging to plan a year in advance now. So the things where you're really thinking like, well, what is Rails going to do? If that do for you, right, is a specific project, a specific initiative, you'll be seeing those come out on an annual basis. And that really, again, the hope is that that really aligns with those measurements of success. So again, we can see a clear path for Rails. And overall, our goal is to have a strategic plan that fits on one page. That's how it can be a really useful tool for staff, but also a really useful tool for you as member libraries to know what's happening. So we've gone over a lot of detail. Again, this is being recorded so that you will be able to go back if this was all kind of too much and watch that piece again. But we want to take a moment to just stand up, stretch, take a deep breath, and we're going to go into our first breakout session to help do that. So this first session is very simple. I'd like you to introduce yourselves, including your name, where you work, the place and type of library, those types of things. And maybe touch on your favorite Rails service. Maybe see if you can agree together or if you find out something new. When we come back, I'll have a poll up where you can share what your group agreed. So I'm just going to pause the recording and then we'll open the breakout groups. So I'm curious, in one word and being specific, what's your favorite Rails service? Again, this might have been part of what you discussed in this first breakout. So delivery, always a big favorite. Our continuing education. The email lists. Our board. The professional development that we offer. So delivery remains strong, but as we've seen across these, the other pieces, delivery and our continuing education is really strong. And people often touch on the networking aspects that we have as well, like the email lists. And then our FOIA request support. So give you just a minute if you want to add in. Well, our last contributions. All right, so thank you so much for sharing those. So we're going to turn now to touch on some of those potential goal concepts. So again, these are at the top level, the broadest things, representing areas where Rails might focus over the next period of time. And these goal concepts really came out of our review. So from our end, the review of a lot of member input and comment, a lot of reports, a lot of data gathered over the course of many years and through formal and informal input methods. So again, coming in as an outsider to the organization, we get to look at all of this. One of the things that we're looking for is what trends really tend to rise to the top and consistently. So we really saw three areas where it really feels like members have consistently asked Rails to focus. And so we wanted to use those as a starting point today. So these areas have really remained consistent requests across the decade that Rails has been in existence. So they include what the legislature mandates Rails do, right? And what often tends to cover our favorite services. But this is also really a reflection of what Rails needs to do internally to serve you and help you be ready for what comes next. So we saw them fall into these kind of consistently into these three areas. So we're going to use these as our starting point. So the concept of future ready libraries, that big work that we do that came up right with resource sharing, or what we are calling organizational excellence. So let's look a little bit deeper. So in all of that data, what really came out for future ready libraries is really what you as member libraries need to be successful in the future. So what do you really need support in? What can really help you be the best that you can be? What can really help fill in the gaps that you have locally? So that could include things like what we learned from COVID, and what those strengths, what those opportunities really showed themselves to be. Our needs and our support around technology, an area where Rails is already strong. Support for the equity, diversity, inclusion work that we're doing and that you need to do in your local libraries. And the advocacy support and needs that we might have. So again, this package of what you really need to be successful and ready for the future. With resource sharing, that's pretty simple, right? It is our bread and butter. This is, again, one of those foundational areas where Rails will continue to provide service. But the question that we really have for ourselves is what really needs to be included now? And again, over the course of the pandemic, I think we've seen where Rails has really worked to expand or to supplement or to redefine what resource sharing can include and what it can mean. So some of what we need to know is, what does that mean for you now? And then that last bucket around organizational excellence can be kind of a two-parter. So one, thinking about what you really need Rails to have, how Rails needs to be structured, what staff need in order to best serve you. So again, that's really internally about Rails as an organization, but also that could be an inspiration or provide guidance for you for potential planning for your own. So again, as Rails might undertake these, it could help be a guide for you. So this has an opportunity to kind of go in those two directions. And some things that might be included in an organizational excellence kind of bucket might be succession planning. How do we really make sure that we have a flow of staff, our finances? I'm really thinking about our organizational culture. For Rails, really thinking about how they could better serve you as members. And then again, hopefully that will help then reflect on you serving your library patrons. And then relationship building with Rails case, really with the state library, with ILA, and with other consortia as example. And so some of what we're here to ask today is just, did we hear you correctly? So in that investigation, in really looking through that data, that information, that reports, did we really hear you correctly? Or is there an opportunity that you really also see elsewhere? So that's what we'll be spending kind of our second and then our third breakout groups on. But first, just in the moment, we want to get a snap sense of what your first impression of the potential focus areas are. So without a lot of thinking, just with that really brief intro, where does this really land for you? So this has been consistent across our town halls, including our town halls with our staff, that we generally feel like these are pretty good. So most of us are pretty happy with it. Some of us, we have a few of us who are still just kind of thinking about it a little bit, but these at first glance tend to resonate. And so we're going to go into our second breakout group just to explore these a little bit more. And again, kind of try to uncover what some of those opportunities are that we have. So I want us to talk a little bit about kind of what comes up for us, what questions we have around these three areas, whether we're excited or satisfied or surprised about them. Again, crucially, if we really feel like something's missing, and what you need to know just really to be able to help contribute and to understand. And so we're going to put you back again in those same breakout groups. And we're going to use the Google form this time to take notes. So I want to just show you before you join your breakout group, I just want to I'm going to pause the recording and show you the form. If you've already kind of tipped into your breakout group, it's linked on your breakout guide. So welcome back from your second breakout. We'd really like to hear a little bit about your conversation in that breakout group. So in this case, you can answer in this poll in a full sentence. You don't need to worry about keeping words together with the hyphen. And we would just love to know what was really something that happened in your discussion. What did you all decide was a key takeaway? What's something that's really resonated for you in that discussion that we just had? So probably how important connection is, agreement with the three potential strategic goals, that Rails really connects us. So that important role that Rails has really in connecting you all together. That small libraries can get lost in the shuffle. So I guess probably like an ask, right, that we make sure we clearly define the terms and the goals. So yes, these are just, if this is really about clarity, we're just at the beginning stages right now. Our goals absolutely need to be more defined. We're just starting right now. That all of our ideas fit under one or more of the areas, which is good. Small libraries need to be involved in the planning process because they're the ones who rely on resource sharing. That our broad goals are flexible, they lend themselves to many concepts. Make resource sharing a given and add a goal that's really about connection or communication. Again, like really thinking about, what do we want to say is just really foundational about Rails. That there are opportunities for equity, absolutely. Okay. So when we think about this again, we're just at the beginning stages, and we use these concepts to help start to shape our conversation. And so we want to turn again and using them as a structure, just to think about how we can really best accomplish these goals, right? So as we turn to thinking about, as people requested here, a little more specificity, wanting to talk a little bit more about what might be happening under them, that's what we want to turn to. Again, that helps us shape that direction, helps us shape that strategy of where we should be working. So if we think about back, we think about objectives, right? So under those broad areas, there should be a number of objectives, and they really highlight how we're going to work to achieve those goals. So they help bring some of that specificity. And that's what I'd really like to spend the third breakout talking about. So in that third round, we're going to break into groups along those three goal areas. So you'll be able to choose the breakout group that you're going into. And I'll take care of those, Monica, to really think about exploring those concepts and about where you really think they should focus. So you won't need a note taker because everybody will be contributing. So each breakout room or each goal, I'm sorry, has its own Padlet. And so I will ask Monica or Stacy, they've been so good about this, to put the links to the Padlets in the chat. They're also on your breakout guide. And so those will really help us form that specificity, those goals. So we're going to use about the first 10 minutes of our brainstorming time to really just brainstorm ideas. So really to have some independent work time here. So what we would like you to do is take those first 10 minutes or so to just really think about what you want to see happen in that goal. And the important thing to remember about brainstorming is that there are no right or wrong answers. It's really about just getting what's in your mind, whether they seem super practical or not, out onto the screen. And so do that, and then really then take the time to look through on the Padlet what your colleagues have suggested. And I'll show you what those Padlets look like before we go, so you can have a sense of how you can do that. And then in the next 10 minutes, I want you to really spend time thinking about just looking together as a group about what got contributed. You'll be able to see all of the input. And so you'll be able to get a sense of what others who are not in your breakout group with you are really talking about. And then just like last time, I want you to leave yourselves just a couple of minutes for just that key takeaway. What did you really, whether that's an independent or a group reflection or both, what do you really want to make sure people hear who weren't in your group, who weren't able to be part of it? And then one of the ways that I really suggest thinking about this, because this could be a big question, is to think about what it looks like when Rails is doing its best work in its goal. So when it's really just hitting it out of the ballpark, what is Rails doing? And it can be helpful to think about that in terms of these three questions. So first, we touched on this a little bit when we talked about our favorite service. So what projects or services of Rails do you feel are most successful that fall under this goal? So it's really a description of kind of the current state. We really feel like we're doing super well here. Then you could think about, what do you wish Rails could do in this area? And then what do you dream Rails could do in this area? And the difference between the two is really about kind of feasibility or practicality. So with wishes, you're really thinking like, I wonder why they're not doing this already. Or maybe you wonder why, if they're already doing this already, that it seems possible. It seems like something Rails could be doing. But those dreams are really big, they're bold, right? The sky is the limit. What would you like to see added that really could be sustainable? And again, this is all in your breakout guide and on the Padlets that I'll show you in a minute. So again, important is to think about our takeaways. We want to make sure those who were not in our groups with us were really able to get a sense of what really struck us in those conversations. So it's a lot of instructions. So just a quick recap. So you want to think about what strategic goal concept you would like to explore further. You'll be in a new group, so just give yourselves, after first, some independent time, and then give yourselves a short time to just introduce yourselves if you don't know each other, and then have some group discussion. And I'll let you know the timing of those. So I suggest structuring your brainstorming into current services, wishes, and dreams. That's a guide that's really helpful to you. And then to be sure to consider what you'd like to share with the whole group when we come back. So let me pause my recording just for a minute so I can bring up the Padlets to show you. So if we look at this organizational excellence Padlet, so again, this is linked to you from your breakout guide, you can see that there are 3 boxes here. And they have the instructions that we just chatted about. And so if you wanted to add your own box, just out here, it might look hot pink or it might look red for you. There's a plus. And when you click on it, it turns into a little pen or a pencil. And it pops open this box for you. And here where you start, where it says subject, where you could see current or you could see wishes or dreams, that's where your title comes in. That's what the bold is in that little kind of post-it Padlet. And then down here where it says write something incredible, that's where you can write more about your idea. And that's what is the stuff that looks more like text. You could change the number. So some people have enjoyed sorting it visually for themselves as well by color. So that's available to you. Here it defaults to white, so to that blank. And then when you press publish, it will show up. As people start adding to this, there are other ways that you can engage too. So again, I encourage you to start by adding in your ideas, adding your Padlets, and then taking a few minutes to then look to see what else other people have put up. And so if you find something, you read something a colleague has put up that you love, that you can see here, there's a little heart. If you click on it, it will show that you liked it. So that's a great way, like, to give a thumbs up to something. And then if you had more questions, if you felt like, or you had more that you wanted to add, right, you could add more here and you can thread those comments. So that's a great way just to give a little bit more information or to continue the conversation, even if someone's not in your group. So again, make sure you have that breakout guide with you. It has the links to the Padlets. Make sure that you grab the link to the Padlet that you want before you choose your breakout group. And I'm going to just stop recording, and then I'll open those breakout groups for you to choose. And the way that I've sorted them, because we have quite a number of people today, just as a first to see, is to use just the name of your library. And you'll see A through M, I think I put, and then N through C. So as we come back from that third breakout group, I'd love to know, again, what was something in your discussion that just really resonated for you, or what's something that your group really thought was very important to share with everybody who wasn't part of your conversation? Again, remember, you can put these in a full sentence, no need to worry about the hyphens. So really making sure we're focusing on forming those collaborative relationships, that the service and resources that we access or that we need really vary widely depending on the size and the type of the library. So again, something that is crucial to keep in mind where Rails has such a large membership base. The fast delivery is important to all sizes and all types of libraries. Absolutely. We all seem to want to be better and do better, and are excited about it. I like that. That kind of energy is so good as we go into a planning process, or as we're in a planning process. Everyone needs staff, resources, and technology and has to advocate for that. We could use help in how to be effective in advocacy. Lifelong, I think, kind of organizational, historically long question, and really crosses library types and our service populations. That libraries need help with complicated issues, legal issues, technology issues, personnel issues. And I saw these pop up a couple of times on our Padlets. So we have just another minute or so for people to add in any last thoughts. And then we'll talk about what's next. The playing field is not level between libraries and locations. How do we honor our taxpayers? See if we can grab this, here we go. Our own taxpayers while better supporting each other. Funding is a perennial concern, especially property taxes and facilities. And universal access to internet, library service, etc., should be a basic right. Most of us weren't trained to be managers or HR leads, right? And we need help. So again, as you have follow-up thoughts to this, I encourage you, if something comes to mind after you leave the session today, feel free to reach out to me and to Monica and to let us know if there's anything that you'd like to add. This is just, again, one way that you can really be involved. So let's really touch base on some of what's next. So the Padlets that we used in those sessions, they'll remain up through this Sunday, through October 24th. So as I mentioned, I think when we came back from our breakout, I encourage you to spend a few minutes looking at the Padlets for the topics that you weren't part of, just to see what the conversation was there and add your thoughts or your likes or your comments. And that, again, as you continue to think about this, if you have a great idea that comes to you later today or tomorrow, just go ahead and add it right up to the Padlet. They'll be there for you to engage with. We have one more town hall in this round, and that's on Wednesday at the same time, so the same morning time. So if you want to come back and do it again, come on back and do it again. We'll have a different group of participants. And then as Monica mentioned in her welcome remarks, make sure to mark your calendar for that second round. So those are happening in mid-November, and you can sign up for those just as you did with these. And our focus is going to be different in these town halls. So again, we're really going to be asking you for what your expectations are. So as we come to you with some more concrete ideas or more formed goal concepts, what do you really expect Rails to be doing in there? So again, crucial for you to put in your input. Then just before we go, I want to make sure that we have time for any questions. I appreciate everyone being here so much. Thank you for spending your Monday morning with us. And you could feel free to unmute yourself if you have any questions, or go ahead and type something in. We want to make sure that you have what you need to be part of the process. And as you get ready to head out to spend the rest of your day, again, thank you so much for your time and for being part of this process.